It's the Powerhouse Woman Show. You're a powerhouse woman, successful, accomplished, but you know the time has come for something else. To pivot, make a shift, or do what you've been putting off for a long time. I'm Monica Pierre, a media entrepreneur, Emmy Award-winning journalist and coach, and I'm on a mission to help you figure out your path forward and create powerful new stories about your life and legacy. There's more ahead. Time to do the greatest work of your life. Hello, once again, and welcome to the Powerhouse Woman Show. Thank you so much. Maybe this is you. You are having a moment or a series of moments where you realize that there's something else for you, that there's a calling for you, there's a leading for you. What do you do with it? Do you ignore it or do you embrace it? That's what we're going to talk about today. And if this is you, if you are having the moment or the series of moments where you know the time has come and that you can be brave and answer that call. So we're going to be joined today by someone who knows exactly what we're talking about. And she is brilliant. Her name is Tiffany White. She's the CEO of Louisiana Children's Museum. And what a journey she's had to this recognition and the saying yes calling. First of all, Tiffany, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much, Monica, for having me. I'm so excited about today's program.
Well, Tiffany has had 25 years of experience leading and supporting children's museums as places that are not only fun and kids can go to, but they're centers of possibility, community connection, early learning, and a connection to STEM. But let's go back a little bit, Tiffany. Your backstory is you had it together, right? You had it figured out. People understood it. You were going to go to medical school. You were going to be a psychiatrist. But there was a moment when you realized, wait a minute, not so fast. Talk about that, about what you really thought you were going to do and the moment when it became a different leaning.
I grew up with Southern parents that thought that believed that education was the answer. So, you go to college and you make a plan and, then you follow that plan. And for me, it was becoming a psychiatrist. I went, I got a BS in chemistry and a BA in psychology. And, I'm going on to medical school and decided to take a year off. And in that year, ended up working at the Children's Museum, the Science Museum, actually, more specifically in Charlotte, North Carolina. And the role that I had there was working with children that wouldn't normally come into the museum and exposing them to STEM and STEM careers. And as I began to do that work, what I realized is I was seeing myself in these children. They hadn't had experiences in museums. I hadn't had a lot of experience in museums growing up. It wasn't something that our family did. And they were being exposed to things that were new, but those new things could be changes in trajectory of their life and take them in a different direction. And so for me, I felt this pulling towards this work with the children. But remember, parents believe that education is the key and you keep going. So I had convinced my family that I was going to be a doctor.
And they were going like, yay, doctor.
Yes. First generation college student, yes. We're going to have a doctor. So everyone is excited about this. And I am in my mind thinking, how do I embrace what I feel is pulling me? However, I have this plan that I've made for my life and where I'm supposed to go.
I have a question, because is it something that's visceral? I mean, I always think of aha moments. Really, sometimes you feel it in your stomach or it's right. But then the next thought is, that's ridiculous. Don't you dare.
Yes.
What was that experience for you? Did you see something? I saw you saw the kids, but there had to be something that said, no. It's going to be this and not necessarily that.
It was something, and I remember it very, very vividly, almost like it was yesterday. So I was, I I talked about having this degree in chemistry, so I had done a lot of chemistry with the students. And what I realized is that what if these children are not going to be chemists? What if they want to study space science? Or what if it's animals? Or what if it's biology? I need to make sure that they're exposed to other areas of science. So that was pushing me out of my comfort zone. And so I was planning a class for them on birds. And we were looking at birds that were around in the city of Charlotte. And we were looking at bird calls. So I had made this CD of bird calls and had all these activities planned for them. And I remember it was one morning, somewhere between sleep and awake. And I heard a call from a bird. And I thought, that's a mourning dove. But I had been listening to these calls and making this CD. So I'm thinking it's the CD. And I realized, no, it's outside of my window. So for the first time, I heard these birds singing in nature. That was not something that I had heard before. So the music of nature. And that was the moment that, what if these children are hearing this for the first time? This is what it feels like for them to experience these areas of science for the first time and realize, oh my gosh, I might be interested here. Let me dive deeper. And so it was that moment that I decided to let medical school go and really embrace what I felt like I was here to do, which was provide experiences for children and families who wouldn't normally have these experiences, and they may change their lives.
That is so powerful. And I don't want to spend too much time on maybe negative reactions. So you go like, hey, mom, hey, dad, hey, family, hey, community, guess what I'm going to be doing now? What were some of the reactions? And then how did you find the courage to, in a way, say, thank you for sharing, but here's where I'm going?
So very interesting. Parents were like, okay, what's this museum thing? You're supposed to be a doctor. We already have a plan. I don't really even understand what this is. They weren't even in a place where they could understand exactly what I was doing, because this was a non-traditional job, right? It wasn't something that they were exposed to. So for a while, it was this back and forth. Oh, no, what you're going to do is you're going to medical school. But after talking and constantly talking about experiences that I was having with the children, I think at some point they realized, okay, this girl is going in a different direction. And they could see that I was having this pulling that was kind of tearing me apart, because I wanted to do what they say. You know, you do what your parents say, you obey and you're obedient. But I also had to be obedient to this life calling that I felt. And they gave me permission to do that. They were like, okay, it's a job. You're making money. This is what we wanted you to do. We wanted you to be successful. It seems like, you are. And then the embracing happened. And that's when life opens up for me.
Right. And that alignment that comes from doing that thing and the joy that comes from doing that thing. Because no parent really wants their child to be unhappy and miserable.
No. I remember my mom and dad came to the museum. The family came and I had pulled out a boa. I was doing a presentation for just the general public, and I had pulled out a snake, and I had the snake around on my shoulders, and my mom is deathly afraid of snakes. So she was just like, what are you doing? Like, I could see it on her face, like, oh my gosh. And she kind of stepped to the back of the audience. And later on, we had a conversation about this. And she was just like, I don't understand how you can do this. And I'm like, Mom, it's not about me. I am providing these experiences for these children that look like me, these children that may not have this experience anywhere else. And what if I'm supposed to give it to them? And my mom and dad were very spiritual people. So, when I started talking about the belief and what I felt this calling, that spoke to them, because that was on a different level.
Powerful, powerful. Tiffany, there are some powerhouse women and men, because we have men who watch the show as well, who are at that place, at that space. And They're trying to explain it, trying to make it make sense to themselves, let alone to someone else. What advice would you give them? Because the leaning and the calling is strong. And listen, everybody, even if you say no and not now, it's not going to go away. It's going to be there.
It's
Tiffany,
not.
what advice do you give?
Well, I definitely say listen, be still so that you can hear, right? Because sometimes there's so much noise and all these things going on in the background. You know, you're taking care of the family, you're doing this, somebody needs this, you're being pulled in this direction. Sometimes you just have to be still and listen, and then follow what you're hearing, because you know in your gut that this is what you're supposed to be what's supposed to happen. You know that this is what you're supposed to be doing. You're questioning it because it doesn't make sense yet. Sometimes it just doesn't make sense. It's like, okay, well, this means my whole life changes. This means I have to move across the country. In the case that I moved from Charlotte to Las Vegas, not knowing anybody at all. But this was all about this purpose that I had for my life. My life's calling was in museums. And so, in order to do the next thing that I was being called to do, I had to move across the country to Las Vegas and explore that in another city. That was work that I needed to do in that city. So, again, bigger than me, listening to what that call and purpose is and committing to that purpose without allowing anyone to get in the way. Sometimes, you have this chatter and
Yes.
people talking, I wanted to please my parents. I had listened to them my whole life. They taught me everything I knew, and I wanted to be obedient to that. But I felt this calling that was bigger than that. And they had always said, you believe and you do what you're supposed to do when you're supposed to do it. And so I was able to convince them through that belief.
What's the importance of staying positive? Because it can be, you can be bombarded with not so positive thoughts.
Yes. Positivity is critical. You have to stay positive. You can't let the negative thoughts creep in. If I let the negative thoughts creep in, it would be, well, what are people going to say? Well, how is this going to play out? Well, what happens if this doesn't work? All those things that come into your mind that says maybe you shouldn't be doing this. You have to stay positive and know that this is the commitment for my life. This is the commitment to my purpose, and I have to follow my purpose. So that's what this is about. And staying positive and having great energy and getting people that are positive around you is very important. I had a group of women that were lifting me up and pushing me forward, even though they didn't know what it was, because they were in banking and some of these other things, and they wanted a day off where I was working on my day off because I felt like this was bigger than me. It was my life's purpose.
Oh, really, really good. And we're going to let people know how they can follow what you're doing. And speaking of your life purpose, we have you here in the New Orleans area. You're the CEO of Louisiana's Children's Museum, which you really joined us in this area this spring, right? It was March.
Yes.
Really, just a few months ago.
Yeah.
So what's happening that's there, and how is the mission and the vision and your calling really expanding? Because I'm sure you're being called for different locations and a different charge upon your work in your life.
Yes, Monica, it's very interesting because I do believe that you have to be strategic and you need to do what it is you're being called to do at that time, but not without the intel. So for me right now, it's about learning New Orleans and learning Louisiana and talking to people who are here and people who understand the needs and the aspirations of this community. Because I know children's museums, I know science museums, I know the industry in the field, I know what works. I've been here for over 25 years and I've experienced lots of things on my own, but through others and their work. What I need is that intel on New Orleans and what does it mean to be here? What are the needs here? What does this community desire to have from the Children's Museum? Or just in general, because sometimes they don't know that the Children's Museum can serve in that purpose. Children's museums sustain communities around the world. And people think, oh, I'm coming to the Children's Museum. It's a fun place to visit with my family. It's safe. Yes, we are that. But we are also organizations that can help to sustain and meet the needs of the community. And that is really what I'm interested in incorporating into the vision and the new next step for this museum and this organization.
Mm. How has what you were going to do in the beginning, what you're doing now, how would do they all still work together?
So it's interesting, Monica, because this degree in chemistry I've used quite a bit over the course of my career. The STEM that I feel calls us, and children need to be exposed to STEM, families need to be exposed to STEM. Everyone needs to be science literate. They won't be scientists, and I understand that. But in order to make decisions about our lives, critical decisions, to understand what things mean when we see them in the media, what kind of decisions we should make about the food that we're eating. Is it GMO? Is it something else? Is it farm to table? There's all these things that are out there and around us all the time. And we're making decisions about that all the time. I feel like we need to be science literate in order for us to do that. So science is important, and that chemistry has followed all the way through. Psychology is knowing people.
Yes.
And I've been very, very successful, I feel, because of the interpersonal skills and wanting to learn more about people and wanting to understand their story and their journey and how that has taken them to different places and learning about them. So psychology I use all the time. And then I also got an MBA while I was in Las Vegas.
Well, of course you did. Okay. Sure, smarty pants.
But you know what, Monica, what that was about is I'm faced with running this museum in Las Vegas. It's a business. It's a nonprofit, but in my eyes, a nonprofit is a business with a heart. And so we still have to keep the doors open. We still have to have funding and resources coming in, and we need to use that in a way that's sustainable to the organization and be fiscally responsible. So that is running a business. The MBA has helped me to do that. So all these things that I picked up along the way, not because I had a plan to pick them up, but because I saw that there was an opportunity and I was able to take advantage of that opportunity.
Wow. This is going to be a to be continued conversation because we are just kind of scratching the surface, not even scratching it.
Well, I
How
would
do
love
people,
to come back.
absolutely. How do people follow you or the museum? What's the best way?
So the work that we're doing at the museum, you can follow on Louisiana Kids is our social handles. We do have a website. Our social is a better way, though. You get real-time information there. So we would prefer for you to go that route. But if you're a website person, it's lcm.org, www.lcm.org.
And the truth is, I met you in April, right?
You
And
did.
yes, and thanks to the Gamble Communications and
Yes,
Sharon, I said I
yes.
booked groovy people on my show, and she goes, "I got a groovy person." So, so happy that you are joining us today.
Yes, yes. I'm so excited to be here and be among you, Monica. I admire you so much. You're so inspirational. And to be here with you is just so humbling for me.
Oh, thank you. Right back at you. Thanks for being with us. And we want to thank all of you for joining us today on the Powerhouse Woman Show. Don't ignore that feeling. Don't ignore that move. Don't ignore what you're being called to do. It's there not to torment you, but to use you for others. Until next time, enjoy this week, and we'll talk to you soon on the Powerhouse Woman Show.